Okay, so about 11 years ago, my wife and I pulled our three kids out from school. And I'd say it's probably perhaps the best decision we've made in our lives. So the eldest daughter is currently studying French and Arabic at Oxford. She's 20 years old. My son, who's 18, he's been working full-time for about 4 years or maybe 5 years, being financially independent. And my youngest daughter is waiting to start a degree at Cambridge. She's 16 years old and she's going to be doing land economy. And I genuinely believe from the experience that my kids have had, and also my own experience and my wife's experience, I guess, so my own experience is that I went to the UK, I was brought up in the UK, and I went to a really good private school. In fact, such a good private school that it's actually called a public school. So in the UK, the system is that you've got private schools, which are kind of like fee-paying schools. But then the most expensive fee-paying schools, the likes of Eton, I didn't go to Eton, but Eton and Harrow are called public schools, oddly enough. So they're not, they are fee-paying, and they're quite expensive. So I went to one of those. So I've been to kind of like, I've experienced the very best of UK education. And I'd really say that, the best thing you can possibly do for your kids is pull them out of school. I genuinely think school is bad for your children. I'm about to explain why. There's so many reasons why school is terrible for your children. And I think it's just like a really bad thing for your child. I think one of the problems is that people these days are kind of like, we're conditioned to believing that school is the right thing to do. It's like, it's good for your children. But I think, there are cases. There's examples where school is great. Like, for example, if you have some uneducated person who doesn't know how to, maybe someone illiterate. Sending your kids to school is fantastic for those people. But really, I'm addressing parents who are kind of like educated themselves, probably got degrees, able to spend time with their children. For those kind of kids, for those kind of parents, I think school is terrible. It's a really bad thing for the child. So where do I start? So the first thing I want to address is that is the first issue that everyone has with homeschool is that they think that the kids are going to be they're not going to socialize, right? They're going to be unsocialized. They're not going to have social skills because school develops those social skills. I think that's just completely false, right? The reason it's false is that the first thing is that school is not something. Kids have been socialized for probably thousands of years without school. So school's this modern kind of like invention. My kids, by the way, all three kids are socially fine. They've got no issues whatsoever. They're all doing very well. My daughter, actually, my youngest, who's 16, she's kind of won national storytelling competitions. They're all doing fine. But the idea that you have to, for example, I have not gone to school for the last 30 years, and I'm fine, right? I haven't developed any social. Well, I'm not. Maybe I'm not fine actually. But okay. Most adults who don't go to school for many years, they absolutely fine. They develop relationships like in the real world and do fine. They don't need to have. Now you're going to say, well, they needed to go to school in the first place. Well, there is no evidence, by the way, that suggests that school is good for socialization. In fact, there's a very big study that was done several years ago, at least 15 years ago, but it was a very comprehensive study in the US. Google it. I'm not going to Google it. Someone else can probably put it in the comments. But that study shows that kids who have been homeschooled have basically better social skills. They're less likely to drop out of university. They've got this. They're just better human beings. But I'm talking about the social side. So in terms of the social side, it shows that kids that have been homeschooled and who haven't gone to school have better social skills, and they're less likely to drop out of university. So if you're looking at it kind of independently, school is bad, even from that social perspective. And the reason is quite obvious to me, right? So you put a bunch of 15-year-olds together or 12-year-olds or whatever. They don't do the best things. I went to, as I said, I went to a really good private school. and we didn't get up to the most ethical of behavior. I mean, it wasn't like I think the worst influences in my life were at high school. That's the worst influence, and that's when I was kind of put together with a bunch of people of my age, and we didn't get up to the best things. And I think that's pretty normal, speaking to most people. My wife didn't have such a bad experience. Her school was quite good, but my one, I just had terrible experiences in terms of behavior. And what happens when you get a bunch of like 16-year-olds together, you get the biggest idiot wins the respect of the group often, and people follow that as the kind of role model behavior, and that person usually ends up with doing badly in their studies, badly in everything in life, and don't get very far after school. Anyway, so that's the social side of it. And there's also a big thing, which is bullying, right? So bullying happens at schools, and that really destroys confidence. And I think that's one of the reasons why my kids have turned out to be fine. They've never had to deal with that. And that's a good thing, by the way, because I think once they're strong and secure now that they're in, they're kind of getting past their teens now, but now that they've got that, they'll be able to face it. So firstly, from an education, from a social point of view, which is meant to be the strength of a school, I'd say that schools do a terrible job. Now, you look at so many school kids that I see. I often have school kids coming over to my house, and they'll just pull out their mobile phone. They won't even talk to people. I mean, it's like it's not. I mean, I see that a lot of the time, and school kids. If you think school kids are socialized, really, I mean, they're not. From my experience of what I can see from kids who have gone to really good schools. Actually, often it can work out fine. Kids can be very confident or whatever, but so can homeschool kids, right? But I think where schools do fail a lot of kids, and that is kind of ignored. So I think even so we're talking about from a socialization perspective, there's nothing that supports the view that school is good for kids. So now you're kind of looking at this academic side. Well, I mean, I went to a good school, as I keep saying. I did my physics. I started learning physics when I was about 8-ish. I did my GCSE when I was 16, right? So that's a good 10 years of gradual study. The GCSE is a course for 16-year-olds. Anyway, so I did that when I was 16. 10 years of overall study. My kids did it in 5 months, and I did it when I was 16. My son, who's probably like similar kind of like intelligence to me in terms of maths and whatever, he's kind of like, his brain's similarly wired to me. He did it when he was 9 or 10, right? I think he did it when he was, I can't remember, 9 or 10. Just think about how bad, how terrible are schools when it comes to education. So what I did in 10 years from finishing at the age of 16, my son did at 10. And if you think your kids are being taught at school, I mean, really, it's just not, they're not. I mean, I remember firstly, a lot of the time they're teaching you it's like they've got, remember, I went to a good school, right? So the stuff that they're teaching you is so useless. I spent so many years learning Latin. I mean, schools are so backwards. Latin, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is a dead language that no one has spoken for like thousands of years. So I spent, and I was bad at it. I hated it. I hated Latin. It has no real use, right? I could be learning. I mean, if you're going to say Latin is useful, this is like you've just been indoctrinated by your school. So if you think Latin is useful, so is learning about anything useful. You could have learned about ancient Mandarin. That's useful. I mean, learning about the evolution of horse carriages, that's useful. Everything has a use, right? But you're trying to learn things that are the most useful. So, I'd say cooking is actually useful, right? Learning how to cook good dishes and whatever, that's useful. Learning Latin is not useful. Yes, I know, I realize that lots of languages today, modern languages, have Latin roots in them. So frigging what? That's not. I mean, if you want to learn about English, then learn English. Don't learn Latin. I mean, it's just not. It's like. I mean, where do I start? I mean, it's like learning to code. And so, to learn to code, you learn how the evolution of the whole of programming. You don't need to know that. You need to code. You need to do something that's useful. Go and learn that thing. Don't go and learn the history of it and whatever. That may give you some benefit, but it's not going to give you as much benefit as learning the thing directly. Schools, if you just compare, if you look at what homeschoolers do compared to school kids, it is night and day. They just absolutely thrash them. And that's why schools have to say, oh, what about the social side? But schools prove nothing on the social side, right? It's easy to say, oh, what about the social side? But why not show the results of that social side, as studies in the US show that they don't do a good job. And it's fairly obvious that they shouldn't do a good job, because that's what's going to happen when you cram a bunch of 15-year-olds. Listen, I think education has, the schools have a role. And the role is that if you're uneducated, if you can't look after your kids, right, then school makes a lot of sense. It's a lot better to send your kids to school than it is to leave them by themselves at home, right? Firstly, that's illegal in most countries, but even in the countries it's not. It's stupid to. School is much better than that. But if you're fairly educated and you're able to stay at home, or one parent is able to stay at home, I genuinely think that school is so damaging for your child, both socially and academically. And it probably, if you're sending your kids to a private school, you're basically wasting your money. Look, I went to a really good private school in the UK. I can tell you, for those of you who haven't been, and remember, I did very well in that private school. I'm one of the few kids in that private school that went to Oxford, so I kind of I did well out of it. I'm one of their successes, as they say. And I can tell you that I learned almost nothing from school, right? Because if I was to be learning from school, I'd be learning at the average pace. And if I'm learning at the average pace, I'm not going to get into a top university, right? You have to be. The things that I did at my high school, I did off my own back, and that's why I got the grades that I did. I.e., I effectively, the success I got from my own school was that I homeschooled myself, essentially. So what I did was I bummed around at school during classes. I was a bit of a joker, didn't pay attention, didn't have much of an attention span either, frankly. And I'd do the work afterwards. And essentially I homeschooled myself. So schools are essentially, what schools are doing is they're basically just it's really like, schools kind of fail everyone if you think about it. So if you're academically performing really badly, you're basically being like, school is probably super demoralizing. If you're probably not learning much, you're probably just like feeling that you're a failure in life. If you're ahead, well, they're not teaching you much, right? Okay, you've got a bit of an ego boost. I suppose that's pretty good, but you're not going to be learning much from school if you're ahead. I guess if you're in the middle, maybe school's kind of just about okay, but then you've got they don't do particularly well, but it's not like, at least you haven't got a problem. At least you're being somewhat challenged. But you know what? If you get that middle person, person who's kind of like average, and you put them in home. If you look at all the records, right? If you go Google these, if you look at these records for GCSEs and A levels, they're all homeschooled kids, right? And parents tout them as geniuses and make up some story about how that kids got a propensity to they've picked up some A level, but no, they just got parents who are slightly pushy. That can obviously lead to bad things, but they've got parents who are kind of like guided them. You can make it a bit more positive there. Guided them, encouraged them. And basically those kids have just done phenomenally well. I don't think my kids are particularly intelligent. They've just been kind of like, the reason they've done well, amazingly well, in simple terms. And I think also this applies to their character. I really think I've got lovely children, really nice kids. And I think the reason for that is simply because they did not go to school. They did not go to school, and that's the reason why they have done well academically. That's the reason why they're confident socially. I think you should really think about, look, school is for the masses. It's great for many people, right? But if you're educated yourself, you can spend time at home. I honestly think it's an absolute no-brainer. Pull your kids out of school. They are literally they're not even wasting their time. They are they're not wasting their time. They're being negatively impacted just by being at school. It does them no good at all. I mean, in fact, it takes away from. I mean, one of the things it just takes away from their success. The more time they spend at school, the less they're going to do well in their academic life and other aspects of their life. I think the best thing we did as a family is pull our kids out of school. You should definitely consider doing the same thing.